Hey guys, Matthew here once again, and I've made kind of not a build that's just more of a concept, I'd say. It's still technically a build, but it's just not very well rounded and pretty horrible. I would not recommend copying it. But the idea here was to try out Kinetic Blast as a single target, as well as a clear, because conventionally, Kinetic Blast is pretty damn insane for clear, and it still is in this case. But I also had an idea that it might do some decent single target these days too if you use Barrage and also the new Anoint that has a couple of return projectiles on the start and end of a Barrage sequence. And then just, yeah, a lot of attack speed, some Barrage, some Pierce, and the end result looking something like this. I wanted to use the Maven's new wands, which are fizz based, so they start out with a bit of fizz damage and then a lot of extra fizz as Ellie on top of that, and they aren't really used for actual wanding. They're mostly a stat stick, but I wanted to force it as heavily as possible to make it kind of a fizz wander. And the end result is it is kind of a fizz wander. I think you'll still be way better off doing like just a int stacking wander, the usual wanding archetype at the moment, but this does work as well. The absolute mess that is Kinetic Blast cannot be ignored. It just fucking has so much stuff going on, obliterates screens. This is no MTX even. The part where it's like real golden and shiny, that's when I put on an MTX, and then it gets much crazier. But this is with the Maven wands that has 2 extra wisps. So the wisps are a support gem that give you a couple of replica attacks, basically, kind of like a Mirage Archer, but for wands. And then the Maven wand gives you another 2 of those. So you have 4 wisps trying to replicate your attacks, and it gives you quite a lot of screen cluster all over the place. Now, these wands are crap, I think, but at the same time, they are kind of usable, and they're also insanely rare. So someone killed like 1,500 Uber Mavens on Reddit and said that they found 5 of them. So it drops from Uber Maven, and let's say it drops 1 in 300 kills. So don't try and do anything like this because it's not worth doing, and you'll be able to do it better as an int stack wander. Either way, the character I've tried to build here was just basically focused on running fast, clear speed, and dual wielding wands. So I ended up, for the most part, doing some defiled cathedrals, trying to find a seer to scry a map, and then just doing lots of shrines to go faster and faster and faster. I went with just haste and sublime vision for haste, so that haste is even bigger, and then took supreme ego, so haste is even bigger, because when you're dual wielding wands, you don't really have a travel skill, you just run around. So I tried to make sure I'm running kind of as fast as possible. Stack some shrines on top of that, and you got essentially headhunter style gameplay, and it's pretty ridiculous. The big drawback to this entire character is I kind of went lopsided on damage, which I think I did once before on a league or 2 ago with a Ellie hit bow character, where I wasn't sure if it would do good damage, so I went all out on damage and basically didn't do any defense. This is the same sort of situation. I went all out on damage because I wanted to make sure that my Kinetic Blast is doing single target, and yeah, when you go all out on damage, you find it, but having no defense whatsoever in modern 2024 PoE is terrible. Which is why I'm saying you should not be doing this, you should not be copying this, because it's just a bad idea. Being able to like die to almost everything, and there's a lot of things out there that'll kill you, is just awful gameplay. I'm still going to end up hitting level 94, 95. I mean, it's still possible to just blast maps and get away with leveling, but it's not really worth doing. So to anyone critiquing some of my other builds that maybe don't have enough defense, this is what a character with no defense actually looks like. Most other things I build should be fairly well-rounded. It's just they're not over the top on defense where you can AFK and kind of take damage infinitely. You're usually just building to the point where you can take a few hits and move on, whereas something like this can't really take a hit. And this is what happens when you build no defense in Path of Exile. You can't really take hits at all, and it's an awful feeling. All that said, Kinetic Blast, pretty freaking ridiculous. Once again, if you're looking for a clear speed monster, I do suggest just chucking on some Kinetic Blast and making an int stack wonder. It's crazy. Let me just go ahead and show you the concept behind this character, how it came together, and yeah, talk about the gearing. Okay, so the character is currently level 93, Z DPS, glass cannon. It's a classic. I wasn't too sure it would do damage, and also I was definitely going to be building glass cannon. I built it into a Warden, so the idea was to basically try and beat Kinetic Blast. It does now have basically a built-in Crown of Eyes in it, so 200% spell damage turned into attack damage. And I was hoping to basically have some single target with it through the use of Barrage and then this Anoint. First and final shots of Barrage sequence fire projectiles that return to you. So all of the benefit of return proj with none of the downside of the damage penalty. And by all of the benefit, I mean just for the first couple of attacks. So to actually utilize that, you try not to stack too many projectiles, because only your first and last one do full value on a return proj, whereas usually you'd kind of stack a lot of projectiles, and yeah, it's sometimes worth it, but obviously Barrage also has a penalty for the attack speed there as well. Well, yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like. You can see a couple of proj return, one or two. The wisps as well through this Maven wand help single target too. And then it seems like maybe some of the overlaps and explosions help too, but it's definitely viable as a single target. By the looks of it, you don't have to go out of your way to look for another single target skill while kinetic blasting. Maybe the return proj thing is what's helping it. I don't know, maybe the Maven wands. Either way, it's totally doable. Like I said, these wands aren't really worth using. You need very good rolls, and then it's also super like hard to actually get them. I just wanted to build with them at least one time in my lifetime to, you know, see if it's even viable. But Fizz Wanders still traditionally not super worth doing. You should be like doing just an int wand with lots of int damage, int stack, and lots of lightning damage. That'll just have a nice well-rounded character, because you have really good defense while also having really good offense. A typical conventional wander. I tried to build into a Warden for this one so that I would also utilize Scorch, big burst damage, and shock. And I was actually, with this system, this concept, getting 100 shocks, 100 shock effect, so 50 shock stacks pretty routinely. So for this concept, this worked really well for shock stacks. But for Scorch, because, you know, when you start going Barrage, your hits just aren't that big. For Scorch, it was not very good. You could see during the boss fights, I think in the clips earlier, most of my boss fights have Scorch from anywhere around 10 to 15%, which just is, you know, not really maximizing the value at all. But it's still something. And then I also grabbed the ranged tincture node here, so that means that we can apply this melee-based tincture stuff to our wands. It's probably better off to actually just get a second tincture, or maybe even perma tinctures instead of like this scorch thing, but I committed to it and stuck to it, and it still did something, so not too bad in the end. Otherwise, yeah, I was just running around with GMP and return proj for clear. So we've got Kinetic Blast, Sacred Wisps, Early Damage, Trinity, GMP, return proj, and doing all of that, and it works pretty well. Otherwise, yeah, just full investment in basically damage. Like I said, I did this once before with a Timeless Jewel here that currently just has an MTX, that's why this looks this way, with lots of spell damage nodes, because each of these is worth 160 attack damage for us, thanks to Kinetic Blast. So we've got spell damage, that's one reserve node there. We've got spell damage, fizz damage, and spell damage. This thing was, oh, another spell damage there. This thing was, I don't know, 2Ds, divines, something like that. There are lots of nodes in here, lots of timeless jewels that can give you 3, 4, 5 spell damage, something like that. And then to actually make good use of it, I also had to use a impossible escape for Ghost Dance. This thing is like 30 or 40 C, pretty easy to get, but I don't know if this is all worth doing. So I did use a Sublime Vision as well for haste, so that the only thing I'm using here is haste, and using Supreme Ego haste, because Auras for this type of build and the Fizz wanding situation aren't that good. If you're a normal wander, you know, Wrath is still okay. Grace and some defenses and stuff still good. For this, I just wanted to run faster because I don't have shield charge. I'm dual wielding wands, and it's a bit weird. So that's kind of the core concept. We've got some, you know, crit nodes and whatever else, and some wand nodes, and actual probably world first specking into Tempest Blast, which is, you know, it's kind of fun. These nodes aren't even very good in my current concept, but I'm trying to become kind of a Fizz wander, so whatever. Otherwise, I do have Wraith Lord, which is just being used for 4 abyssal sockets for life and multi. Life multi, life multi, life multi, with like a little bit of damage here or there. A Darkness Enthroned that tries to fill out my resists. I'm still not even capped on resists, I'm pretty sure, because it was a bit weird. And yeah, Chaos Res isn't good either. And I'm using an Atulas so that I don't have to get life anywhere else, which, I don't know, was an okay play, but still probably could have done better. Picked up a pretty good ring for 1 or 2 divines here that just has pretty much pure profit for us as mirrored, as far as mirrored rings are concerned. Trying to stack some flat fizz on my amulet, on my rings. Didn't manage to do it there just because I needed more resists. But otherwise, yeah, this is kind of the character. It's a bit weird, and it does convert into fire so that I can try and do more Scorch. And still, the Scorch wasn't kind of big enough. The POB will tell you that it's something like 15 to 20 million Kinetic Blast DPS, and that is noticeable, and it does help kill bosses pretty easily, pretty quickly. But with no durability whatsoever, you have to make sure you kill things very quick and move out of the way very quick as well. So I don't know. This isn't really a character. This isn't really something anyone should play, but the take-home message is I think Kinetic Blast still an absolute S-tier clear skill and can actually be used for single target. And then also Warden for wanding. Not too bad. Has some pretty good perks to it. The range tincture stuff is cool. And then, of course, you can actually utilize max shock if you spec, you know, a little bit accordingly. So we've got a bit of shock duration there to make sure that we can get to those large shock stacks. I'm still specking some life here, but, you know, maybe we'll finish that off. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this entire situation. I don't think the wands are too worth it, and probably would have been nicer to just make a well-rounded wander and actually do harder content without dying a lot. I mean, I don't know how many times I even died in the end. 50, just zerging stuff, which, you know, not the greatest by level 93 and a half, but it is what it is. So yeah, Kinetic Blast, these wands, like I said, don't try this at home. I don't think this was worth doing. And then Kinetic Blast and Int Stack Wanding should still be good. With that, I guess that's all I'll say. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.